Hello again, this is Charlie Bellefontaine. You're listening to the Homebuyers Hour on WCPT AM 820. And apparently we triggered our guest today, and he started on a giggling storm as soon as we started. So, Steve,
if you're buying a house or selling a house, you would hire me to make sure things go smoothly.
Most of the time.
If it didn't go smoothly, it wasn't something I did, is what it ends up being. Today, I'm live on TikTok at Loftus Law. So if it's Wednesday morning where you are at about 10:14 and 25 seconds, you can get on TikTok and you can watch me live and hear 1/4 of the conversation. It's not a good design. I'm going to work on that. But for now, that's what it is. Hi, TikTok. Or find me on Instagram at Loftus_law.
Thank you so much. And my name is Charlie Bellefontaine. I own Chicagoland Home Inspectors. Our phone number is 312-544-9180. And then let's get right to the man of the hour, the guy with the biggest truck. Not that it means anything at all, and it's just lovely wrapped. Joey Mathews, the VA loan nerd. Joey, if you don't mind, give us more of an introduction.
There's way too much time in between biggest and truck right there.
There was a lot of time in between there, but that's okay. Hi, friends. Joey Mathews, the VA loan nerd here. NMLS 1330694. You can call or text me at 630-235-2405. You can find me at thevaloannerd.com. We're across all the social medias. Is at the VA Loan Nerd. Man, that was a long saxophone.
That's why they call it a pregnant pause, because I think Joey just got that pause pregnant.
It could happen. Who knows?
We'll find out in 9 months.
So what? I see a whole bunch of stuff going on where everybody's saying, buy now, buy now, buy now. What the heck is happening?
Oh, so you've been listening to me for the last 2 years.
No, it's just on the news.
The last 2 days, too.
Yeah. No, so, I mean, the long story short, the BLS data from Friday, the non-farms payrolls came in way short of expectations, like way short. And they revised the previous month down, and the previous month had come in hot. And shocker, if you had applied the data that got revised to the previous month's expectation, it actually would have came in short. So big reaction in the international markets. The Nikkei 225 was 12% sold off on what was our Sunday evening, their Monday trading session. So we saw the same ripple through the Dow, the NASDAQ, the S&P. We saw, I think it was a 6% loss on Monday. It was our biggest loss since Black Monday of 1987. And the reason that matters is because as people are selling off stocks, they are buying something else. They are buying more secure options, which you find in the bond market, 10-year long-term notes. So the 10-year Treasury dropped from let me pull up the Treasuries here, if I can, you know what, I'm not going to. It was trading at a 4.3% yield just on Wednesday, Thursday last week. It dropped to a 3.6% yield, almost a full 1% drop in yield. It has since rebounded to just under 4%, but that's still good enough to get us 100 basis points of total improvement from where we were a week ago. 200 basis points is equal to 2%, but that's not what rates. It's literally what rate costs. No. So, continue. Sorry, sir.
No, don't be sorry. I went out to a breakfast meeting yesterday, and it was all real estate brokers and people in the business. And I did have another neighborhood loans mortgage person sitting across from me. And she was...
was it Emma?
It was, actually.
Emma.
I love Emma.
And she was lovely. And I was listening to her talking about how she's getting overwhelmed with phone calls that people are in the process. And she was, saying there's a whole lot of canceled deals that have been happening to her. But people are in the process, and they're like, well, I hear that the rates are dropping, and can we lower our rates? Can we lower our rates? And she was repeating the same thing over and over again. And I'm just going to ask for our listeners, Joey, please say why don't the interest rates for mortgages react as quickly as the market does?
Because we don't have knee-jerk reactions. Investors don't have knee-jerk reactions like the market does. They want to see how things shake out, right? So honestly, my thought here is that this is a blip. This is a short-term blip for what is going to be a much larger. This is a tremor prior to the earthquake, right? In my opinion. Right?
Is this
Tomorrow,
Nostradamus coming out here again?
Earthquake.
Yeah, we're an earthquake. Holy cow.
nuggets.
Gloom and doom.
Butt loving. Well, no, I think tomorrow when we see the initial jobless claims, we're going to see if that comes in well short or well beyond expectation again. We're going to see continuing jobless claims again. We saw unemployment go to 4.3% when the Fed did not want it to get over 4.1%, which we were at last month. So I think that was the biggest thing, is outside of obviously non-farm payrolls being so short, is that they saw 4.3%. That triggered some thoughts. And I believe, I don't know if I talked about it last week, but our SOM indicator, so the SOM indicator is, I can't remember her name, but her last name is SOM. Long time ago, she created a indicator that says that we are already in a recession. And once that indicator is at 0.5%, it's a measure of the previous 3 months of unemployment increasing by 0.5%. So the average of the past 3 months, and then if this current month is increased over the average of the last 3 months, is over 0.5%, then you are technically already in a recession, and you are about to see the big part of it in the coming term. And we have triggered the SOM indicator, and that indicator has predicted the last 6 recessions correctly. So we will see if we're 7 for 7 on this thing. But it's triggered. Entirely possible we're heading into a recession or already in a recession. Technically, the indicator says you're already in a recession. It's just about to get worse.
Is it possible to have runaway inflation and a recession at the same time?
You were the only one here that would have experienced that back in the 70s.
Ouch! There was an elderly joke. For all my listeners that belong to AARP, his name is Patrick Loftus. All right? Let's start a whole new caucus, and we're going to just bombard him. Go elderly!
Well, the definition of a recession is, as far as I'm aware, is 2 straight quarters of negative growth. So by definition, before you can actually call it a recession, you will have been in a recession for 2 quarters. Now, Joey, I have a question for you, if you know the answer to this. Have we experienced an inverted yield curve yet?
We've been in one for years. Not years, but we've been in one for a long time.
Well, specifically I'm referring to the 2-year versus the 10-year, which traditionally is also just like the SOM indicator, as you referenced just a moment ago. That's also it's been a rock solid predictor of a recession.
Correct. And I'll pull up the yield curve, but it has been inverted for a long time. However, it looks like it's going to correct soon, I would say. But that would obviously it's the longest yield curve we've been in history. But I believe that there is a correction coming to it soon. I just don't know when that will be. But yes, I'm going to put it on our Facebook. I just put the SOM indicator on it just now, too.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I mean, I've been swapped. I want to raise my prices, and then I'm listening to you guys, and it's like, what is going on? I mean, we just hired a bunch of people because we've been, not bunch, 5. We've been overwhelmed with work, and we're booked out in advance. Steve, are you seeing the same thing out there in the market? Are you guys busy, or you think things are slowing down? Or
So it's interesting you asked that question, because the fact is normally there's the seasons that we have, right? So we have the spring is the busiest, and then you have fall, which is kind of like a mini spring, and then it slows down in the winter and it slows down in the summer. I was slower in the spring, which was kind of odd this year, but I am now very busy, which is great. But it's kind of interesting how the whole thing works in regards to that. As far as a recession goes, well, if Joey's his information and the facts matter, right? So if that's what it is, then we've been in a recession for quite a while. It may just not be as strong of a recession. But as far as like the market goes, absolutely. I mean, there are pluses and minuses. So like Joey was mentioning, the fact of like the rates going on and so on, if there is going to be larger recession or a larger impact on what this is going to mean and so on. What does that mean to home buyers? What does that mean to sellers? That sort of thing. And I think what happens really in the market right now is that people are seeing the benefit of actually buying now instead of waiting. But at the same time, you still have the ones that are on the fence. So these little things that happen in the market can obviously trigger, and it can make people jump where they weren't jumping, before. So it's kind of where I've been seeing it. As far as cost wise, knowing that your value is what it is. So no matter what your numbers are and so on, it should not be based, this is just my opinion, but I don't think it should be based on the market. I think it should be based on your services. So
Of course it should.
So with that being said, no one likes to spend more money than they have to, but guess what? The fact is you provide a value that other people don't, or maybe something different or more, whatever it is, and you pay for what you get. I mean, that is just reality in general.
Not always. I'm going to argue with you a little bit because there's a lot of people that just want to raise their prices based on what somebody else's value is.
That's true.
Assuming that everybody is a commodity and we're all the same. That's not the case. It's your job as a broker, my job as an inspector, his job as an attorney and a mortgage person as well, to be able to convey that value. And if it's not worth it, then we should be smart buyers.
Yes, but I think it depends on the profession as well.
Of course it does.
So I'll sit here on here and tell you I'm not a cheap broker, right? I mean, I'm not a discount broker. There's a lot of them out there. That is not me. And it's not because for any reason except for the value that I bring is very different than others, right? So I think it just depends on the professional as well as the career. Patrick?
Yeah,
he's like his mouth is open, ready to talk. I'm like,
listen, I wouldn't necessarily. So you say this word recession, and it's one of those things that people really have a visceral reaction to because we've been through recessions, we've been through one of the worst ones.
Happens all the time.
And and especially, enough people that get laid off or they're negatively affected by it. But there are people and there are companies that come out ahead in recessions. You will, for example, leaders in an industry will tend to do better than the folks at the margins because they're able. They have the resources to consolidate at that point and push out smaller businesses or maybe to buy up someone who does not have sufficient resources to weather a storm like that. So, in many respects, it's just like we've been talking about over the past, 18 months, where with high interest rates sidelining a number of people who would be using borrowed money to buy real estate, it's not sidelining people who have cash to buy real estate. They're not rate sensitive. And so they're able to take advantage of value as opposed to being constrained by what they can afford to pay on a monthly basis. So to talk about the economy in recession as a monolith, I don't think necessarily provides a lot of value in terms of the conclusions you might reach. For the housing market is in an interesting place. The supply is not meeting the demand thus far. I also think you're going to see people, for example, if we start seeing more layoffs, you may see people not listing because they're ready to move on to their next place, but because they need to cash out some of that equity and they don't have any other way of doing it. Because if you're laid off, you're not going to refi, Joey. Tell me if I'm mistaken about that. So
unless you're VA.
Tell me about that.
Well, it's an interest rate reduction refinance loan. I mean, it's a no income, no doc loan. It's literally streamlined. The only thing they care about is that the veteran is saving money.
Yeah, Joey, I'm going to need you to start saying mean things about VA loans because every time you say something nice about VA loans and other benefits for veterans, my wife wants to go join the reserves, and I can't have that.
No,
high suicide rates.
She's going to be veterans.
High suicide rates.
Oof.
So we got that.
All right, let's steer off of that.
All right.
I've heard words
Sorry, Joey.
of inflation, recession. I've heard depression. What are there? How many levels are there? And going up and down. Like, we know that depression is super recession. At least I think it is. is there a superinflation? Is there a word for that or not?
I mean, I think maybe what you're getting is the stagflation that you had in the
Is that a
70s.
word?
Yes,
Okay.
that was coined in the 70s. You had inflation coupled with lack of growth in the economy. So things were costing more, and no one was getting raises.
I guess where I was going, though, is, you know, if it's only inflation or recession, you know, and those are your only two choices, well, then you're either going up or down in the roller coaster.
Well, inflation is far better than the alternative, which is deflation. Deflation is a disaster. Just ask anyone in Japan. Deflation means
Define
that
deflation for me, please.
deflation means that go ahead, Joey.
No, I was just going to talk about how they've been in a deflationary period forever, and they just recently got out of it. I don't know if they fell back into it yet or not, but yeah.
Yeah, deflation, and in China they're talking about it as well. But deflation is where things start to cost less over time, and that sounds great, except that what that causes people to do is hoard money. Because if I think that the goods and services that I want to purchase are going to cost less in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to wait 2 weeks, or I might wait. You know, it causes a lot of savings, and you might think, well, savings is good. Yes, but it's not good if you're a business and you need people to be buying your goods or services. And if you take that and you put an entire economy in that position, it really it puts things in a very stagnant place. And that's why they talk about aiming for 2% give or take inflation, because we want things over time to continue to cost a little bit more. But the high inflation is what, that's where you get sort of the opposite thing, where like in Argentina, where as soon as you get paid, you go spend it immediately, because whatever things cost today in a week, that you want to be ahead of the guy with the ticket gun, because that's the only way to fight inflation if you're trying to save your paycheck. And they even put limits on, like, what people want to do is they want to buy Bitcoin. They really want US dollars because it's so stable. And governments like in Argentina make it really difficult to get US dollars. If you took $100 bills down to Argentina, you could make a real nice arbitrage on that cash.
That's interesting. And boy, I just so much want to do a dig on Saudi Arabia and $10 million withdrawals, but I'm not going to go that route because it's going to change the whole subject. But and thank you guys all for explaining all that stuff to me. It really does help me understand how everything relates to real estate, the mortgages, and I've just learned so much over the last couple of years with all this stuff. But I'm going to go right back to, now I want to get to the horror stories that I want to talk about today. But, for me, it seems like everything happens on the 8s. And what I mean by that is, yes, Patrick, I'm old. I've been around, real estate since 1988. And I remember we had a drop in houses and how things were going about then. The same thing happened in 08, or 98, I'm sorry. The same thing happened in 08, and that was super severe. And then 18, and I'm going to guess it's somewhere around 28, this is Charlie's Nostradamus pick or whatever. I'm going to guess it's going to happen then too.
I was born in 78, so what are you trying to say?
And say that the real estate, you ruined the 70s. That's what I'm trying to say. You killed the 70s.
Me and Paul Volcker, we ruined Carter's presidency, is what you're saying, and you might be right about that.
And I think you have some of my hand-me-down tie-dye jeans that I used to have. So, but that's beside the point. So I want to get to something that I chatted with Steve this morning about that was kind of a big sucker punch in the mouth to me, and I'm like, damn it, we need to get this out there in the open. It's So Steve, just correct me if I'm wrong. We have a person, an elderly person, you said they were in their 70s. They own their home outright, and they were looking to sell it. And somehow, some way, he got called out by, I think you used the term iBuyer and something. I'm going to ask for that definition a little bit. They lowballed him. He thought it was a fair price. He didn't know better. He signs not a standard real estate contract, but a different type of home purchase contract, and he's kind of stuck with that. now. Did I sum that up right?
So he's not stuck with it. That's not entirely accurate, but a lot of that what you just pointed out.
That's scary stuff.
Well, the biggest thing about it is in 18 years of doing real estate in the real estate field, I have never heard of this before. And long story short, basically this guy signed, these people reach out and say, hey, we'll buy your property at this, whatever. And he's like, oh, okay, and he's, he's nervous, he's worried, he doesn't know how it's going to get sold, this, that, whatever. A lot of people think that their properties don't get sold. I don't know why they think that, because if you have a half of a brain realtor, they're going to be able to sell your property.
But that's even because they're ignorant with the real estate, and it's not a bad word.
No. But yeah, I mean, yes, but what I'm saying is, going back to what I was mentioning is the fact of like this, they call him up, they say, hey, we'll give you this much for your property. And a person would have no clue of what the property is worth because they've not talked to a professional. So they hear these numbers and they go, well, yeah, I mean, that might work. And I really need to get out of this situation and so on and whatnot. And basically these type of buyers are providing, a number that they're basically trying to hose the client. I'm going to say it. I'm not going to. So it's one of those situations where I've heard of this before, but I also know that quite a few people I've talked to, they go, well, I got an offer from something, but I don't know if it's any good. I should talk to a professional. That's when they call us. And you talk to them and they tell you what they're getting and you go, absolutely not. That's not a good idea. They are hosing you. They are trying to take advantage of you. And that is a legit way of saying they're trying to rip you off and tell you that your property is worth X when it's worth Y. And the fact is that in the last 18 years, as I mentioned before, you can always get out of a contract if there's a certain, as Patrick was saying before, but statute of limitations, meaning like a certain amount, a certain amount of time, a 5-day review, 10-day review, 14, whatever that is, as far as attorney review goes. And I was not educated on the fact that even if you do that and you have that right, if the buyer has very deep pockets and they are known for this and they do this for a living and they don't care clearly about anyone else, they can go ahead and say, okay, well, you got out of this contract, but we're gonna put like it's not call it a lien, but whatever it's called,
recording the contract.
A recording the contract, which basically means that
I want to learn more about recording.
Yeah, it means that now if they were to sell, now they have to pay some sort of fee because they got out of this contract, even though I was under the impression from doing this for so long that you could always get out of your contract with an attorney review. And I have now learned that is not accurate. So now I have to go back to this buyer, even though I saved him so much money, that to get out of this now so that they don't record it, he's going to have to pay a fee in order to record it, or so he can get out of this, and then he can move on with his merry way. But instead, this company just decides to take advantage of people, and this is ridiculous.
But it happens all the time.
But I've never heard of a fee having to be paid to get out of it and so on. It's just crooks. It's just horrible people in this world.
Taxes. I see people buy properties because they buy the taxes so they get the property, and then they force someone else out there. But I'm getting off topic. And Patrick, what does that mean?
I'm
Recording.
I'm foaming at the mouth listening to you guys talk about all this legal stuff. I'm going.
Well,
I wonder when they're going to ask the lawyer to.
We're not talking legally. That is not our job. That's yours. However, we are told by attorneys such as yourself in the past, maybe not
Patrick
from you,
says.
but other people that are attorneys saying, oh, yeah, you can get out of it within a certain amount of time. And that's obviously not completely accurate. Could you please explain?
All right, couple things. All right, so let's quickly, I'll explain recording the contract. Recording the contract, so the county has a ledger, right? It's a public record of documents that affect real estate in the county. If you record a contract, it means you take the contract to the county and you ask them to put it in the ledger on this property's portion of the ledger is the simplest way I can say it. What that does is it puts the public on notice that there is a contract between a buyer and the owner of the property for the purchase of the property, and it puts a subsequent buyer on notice that their rights, if they enter into a contract themselves with the owner, may be subordinate to that other buyer's rights. And until that other buyer's rights are adjudicated either by some sort of settlement or by the buyer recording a release of that contract that's been recorded, basically another buyer's not going to want to get involved. There's nuance to it, and I'm not going to get into further details on that. By all means, if anyone wants to know more about that, reach out to me on social media and we can have that conversation. All right, so that's one. That's what is meant by recording the contract. It's a way for a buyer to protect their rights in case a seller decides, you know what, I just don't feel like selling you the property, which does happen sometimes. All right, so that's one. Number two is, and this is a very common misconception, Steve. So you shouldn't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm behind the ball, or I'm behind what the knowledge is. And I even have arguments with other lawyers about this, which is the attorney review period in a contract. Now, if we're talking strictly about the multi-board 7.0, the attorney review provision gives the attorneys for each party 5 business days to review the contract and either propose modifications, outright reject the contract, or you can just accept it as it's written. Generally speaking, we'll write a letter asking for certain modifications, mainly on the buyer side. And occasionally on the seller side, there'll be some things that I want to get modified. But mainly on the buyer side, I'm going to be wanting to get, for example, I'm going to be evaluate what the real estate taxes are likely to do in the next 2 years, well, in the current year and the following year, because we want to make sure that the real estate tax credit given from seller to buyer at closing accurately, as much as we can predict the future, reflects what that tax bill is likely to be prorated through the date of closing. Appraisal contingency is another one. Those are pretty standard things that we want to get into the contract as modifications. Now, it is, I think, conventional wisdom that this 5-day attorney review period effectively grants the attorney a magic wand to make the contract go away just by writing a simple letter. And I can tell you that if you've read the case law, it's not true. It's not true. If you don't have a valid objection to material provisions of the contract that don't involve the purchase price. A purchase price is outside the scope of attorney review, as well as if you're using the CAR form, the compensation of the brokers, by the way. Then if you don't have a valid reason, if the seller really wanted to hold a buyer's feet to the fire and say, nope, I want you to buy this place, if you didn't write that letter in a way that articulates a valid objection to the contract, you might be in trouble once you get into court. Now, the reason the conventional wisdom is that you can just write that simple little letter and just, you don't have to pay too much attention to it, is that the vast majority of time, it doesn't make sense for either the buyer or the seller in that situation to seek out.
It's not worth the fight.
It's not worth the fight because it's much easier to seek out an alternative. Yeah. If you're a buyer, go buy something else. Don't get involved in a $50,000 attorney fee lawsuit that you may or may not be able to recover the attorney's fees that you spent. On the seller side, especially in a market like today's market, just find another buyer. I mean,
okay, so all that being said, that's very helpful, very educational. I appreciate that. And obviously, listeners do too. Charlie just learned something, so that's important. Maybe even Joey. Maybe even Joey. So here's the question, though. So I go under contract with someone who buys a property, and I'm the listing agent, and you as the seller say, listen, we're going to go under contract with them, but then we get another offer even though we're already under contract. Where's the gray area there when they can actually say, well, unless you can actually match this price, we're going to go ahead and cancel this contract and go with a new contract? What is that? Because that is the same thing here Because
I was
in this
gonna ask the same
situation,
thing.
by the way, it was cash, so it's not a 5-day, it's a 14. I don't know if that makes a difference.
Doesn't.
Okay.
I mean, five
So-
or 14. Those are the only two.
Okay, that's
the only
fine.
difference. I mean, I don't
And
know.
you're-
I don't know how that provision in this contract that you're referring to was written. So I'm not going to advance an opinion specifically about that. But these opinions are specifically in reference to either the car or the multi-board more specifically.
Okay, so, all right, but again, going back to what I was asking, I appreciate that. So, if someone puts an offer in and we say, yep, once you're under contract, we're good to go, other things are backup offers. But one of the backup offers comes in and it's $5,000 more than someone else is buying that property for. And my seller says, well, I want to cancel that other contract and go with this one because it's more money.
It does happen sometimes, and the seller is taking a risk there. Now, it almost always works out for them, which is why when I'm saying to a seller, look, if you've got no reason other than a higher price, you're treading on some thin ice, and usually that ice holds. And just understand, if you get a buyer that has a deep pocket and feels some kind of way about it, we might have a bigger fight here. What I often recommend, and no one's ever taken me up on it, is in that backup offer there, I forget which one, maybe it's optional section 33 maybe, I don't have it in front of me, but there's an optional section in the multi-board that says this contract is contingent upon a previous contract being validly terminated. Basically, until I've got that mutual cancellation agreement on the first contract, I'm on pins and needles. My focus is directly on getting both sides' signature on that mutual cancellation agreement. Once I have that, I'm good. Okay, but you got to be careful. You cannot just take it for granted that a buyer, because if a buyer feels some kind of, and especially if you're talking about higher end real estate, if we're talking about a $3, $4, $5 million property, and you try to squeeze out another $200K because you got a late offer, boy, people who have $3, $4, $5 million to spend on real estate, they usually have a lawyer already, and that lawyer is going to be firing off the nastiest letter you ever seen.
Okay, so I get that, but at the same time, in this situation, the fact is that there are companies out there that have deep pockets, take advantage of people, and somehow they get away with it, or it's a money grab for them at that point.
Well,
why is there not a law? Why is there not a written rule, a lawyer? I don't know the terminology.
Well, let me
But
rephrase it.
it's ruining someone else because they have money.
All right, let's go back to the education stuff, and let me rephrase that stuff. Patrick, what can a buyer and a seller, and I know an attorney can argue both sides, or a good attorney can argue both sides, what can a buyer do to protect themselves from something like that happening, or a seller protect themselves from something like that happening?
You've got to be your own advocate, okay?
That's where I'm going.
If somebody hands you a contract, so if you are not, look, I'm going to talk to all you people that think you are real estate experts when you really only are a real estate hobbyist. Okay, if you are not buying and selling real estate as your profession, you're an amateur. And if someone who is a professional comes to you and wants to do a real estate deal, you are probably going to get had. You're probably going to get had. You need to be consulting with somebody that has expertise in real estate, okay? A lot of people aren't going to want to hear that. They're not going to. They think that they understand.
Yeah.
They think they understand. At least get someone's opinion. Steve's not going to charge you to have a 15-minute phone call, and he'll look. I mean, in this instance, the property is a condominium, and especially if it's in a high-rise, it's not too difficult to figure out what similar floor plan square footage sold for in that building within the last 6, 12, 18 months. That'll give you at least a ballpark as to what that property is worth and whether or not you should be accepting.
So that brings up the whole thing within our settlement too, which I think is really, really important. Why you need a professional is something like this.
And how to find that professional.
Yeah, because if you don't
ask.
hire a professional and you don't hire someone who actually knows or at least has a connection, or with an attorney that they use on a regular basis, who do this on a regular basis. As Patrick just mentioned, you could get had.
But
So
it's everybody. It's not just the attorney. It's Joey. It's you. It's me.
Oh, it's it's somebody that doesn't
We have a lot
do
of bad
what-
actors
Right.
in our
Right.
fields.
What's crazy is that I don't know why I'm surprised when these things happen, but I am, just because I'm like, how could someone, why is this legal? Why is it something that you can take advantage of somebody just because? I mean, what kind of a terrible person are you?
It happens too many times, and I've been neglectful on the watching the clock. Steve, can you give us your contact information?
Yeah, Steve Davis. You can find me at Instagram at I'm Steve Davis.
He's
And
rubbing the old migraine thing.
number is 312-513-6314. It's just disturbing to me, and
I get it.
you know.
I used to work with a guy named Phil, and we called him Bullwinkle because he would get these migraines and he would rub his temples, like I'm doing on camera, and his fingers were up in the air and he looked like a moose, so we called him Bullwinkle. Patrick, please.
Steve, your compassion is admirable, and it's well
Very
placed.
admirable.
And I hear where you're coming from human being to human being. And all I can tell you is that the law is not meant to protect everyone from everything. It's kind of meant to protect things out at the margins. Now, should there be legislation considered by the Illinois legislature and signed by the governor, say, for example, Charlie, you referenced at breakfast, a 3-day cooling off period for things like timeshares.
Timeshares,
Yeah, I mean, for iBuyers, I don't see why that would be anything other than a benefit for consumers.
What is an iBuyer, please? Could you explain that?
An iBuyer, it's just a quick and easy term to describe someone who's just coming in and making offers for real estate, all cash. I think that's what Zillow called it when they were doing that for a minute, and they lost like $1 billion or something.
I still get those postcards once a week that they mail them to my house. We'll buy your home. Just give us a call. We'll give you the greatest price in the world.
Sight unseen, no closing costs, all that stuff. I mean, there's a cost to that, by the way. And look, there are instances. I'm not giving you my contact information. Patrick Loftus, I'm a real estate lawyer. Hire me to sell your house. Find me on Instagram, Loftus_law, on TikTok at Loftus Law. I can continue talking your ear off about this stuff
it's a big deal.
in a
People
couple
are
minutes.
getting harmed financially, and that's the biggest thing in real
This
estate.
is their
people
largest
are.
asset. This is one of the largest assets, if not the largest, that they have in their life. If they are not hiring professionals, I am feeling extremely bad for
People
them.
don't know better. That's the biggest
Oh
thing.
man,
I-
it just hurts.
Everybody's worked up over here,
There's a
Joey.
place in the market for what these
I love
folks
it.
do. But in this particular instance, I don't think this is that kind of situation. I think they
Somebody lives in a house for 30 years, pays it off. He's 72 on a fixed income, and then all of a sudden he gets sucker punched. I'm sorry.
It's a bamboozle. I mean, there's
cool.
there's a number there, and it's not the number that we discussed at breakfast. There's a number there that does make sense where everyone kind of wins. You've got a seller that needs to move fast, or they have needs that make going through the regular home selling process not really an option.
I get it.
Because it's hard to sell a house most of the time. Even the not even, anyways.
But they just don't have the time and the energy and everything else to do it. I get it. They're
But,
looking for a convenient way out, and that has value. And if they're willing to pay for it, they're going to pay for it.
And I can tell you the way I know that this iBuyer overstepped is that someone came in and basically cut their knees out. I mean, whatever they're going to end up getting, we were talking about just a small, basically, make us walk away fee, small in comparison to what their profit would have been had they just bought the place for the number that they had agreed on. That's where it's an overstep, because if somebody got the idea that actually this is really unfair, I should talk to somebody, and it didn't work out, you didn't nail that number. You got greedy, and this iBuyer got greedy, and they're going to make only a small percentage of the profit that they
Still
could have
making something.
if they'd have just been pigs instead of hogs.
I love that saying. Joey, give us your contact info, please.
Man, I love listening to you guys though. Like sometimes I just want to sit back, relax, have a cigar, or listen to what's going on. Anyway,
Drive around
Joey
in that beautifully
Mathews.
wrapped vehicle.
Yeah, sit around,
Till it breaks down.
You'd be nice.
Hey, 3 Teslas in. I've been fine. The VA Loan Nerd. Hi, Joey Mathews, VA Loan Nerd. You can find me at the VALoanNerd.com. Across all the social medias as at the VA Loan Nerd. You can call or text me at 630-235-2405 or look for the stupid Cybertruck with the VA Loan Nerd.
It's an awesome looking truck, and I really like the wrap that you did on there.
Joey's sitting here. He's like, how is the iBuyer thing not regulated when his industry is like the most heavily regulated industry in like the entire world?
They go cash.
Don't tell people that. They think we're crashing. Because, I don't know, whatever.
Because they go cash. That's all there is to it. My name is
they
Charlie
also-
Bellefontaine. I own Chicagoland Home Inspectors. Our website is www.thehomeinspectors. That's plural, O-R-S, and it's a .com. We just had one of our guys move down to Bloomington Normal, so we started expanding our market. He wants to start doing business down in that general area, and hopefully it's all going to work. I don't think our radio station reaches that far, but I want to say right now we're about 1/3 of the entire state of Illinois, maybe a quarter. That
Podcasts go that far, baby.
Absolutely they do.
I love Boomer Charlie. He's just like, oh, this radio thing. I mean, you get in your car and you dial it up to AM 820.
Oh,
like,
man.
Charlie,
WCPT, where the facts
where
matter.
facts matter.
There it is. You get the old Chicago accent that comes in there as well.
Steve's sick of me.
Yeah, every week I know we get in here, and every week I try to bring on another real estate agent, and Steve Davis comes with us once a month just because I truly value, what he does. And like just recently, I had a client who's renting a home, and the landlord wants to sell the house, and there was a lot of horrible repairs that were done to this thing. I mean, no permits and just outright done wrong. And literally dangerous, So we send our people in there. We document all these things, and they're like, yeah, he wants to have over market. He wants us to pay for all these things, and they're adding up $25,000, $35,000, $40,000 worth of repairs.
Oh, 85.
You think it's 85?
Yeah,
Okay,
at least
fair enough.
80.
And I'm trying to be a little more compromising, I guess. But we're talking new electrical service. We're talking about major underpinning for steady movement of foundations, and that there's some big numbers there that are going on here.
HVAC, plumbing,
plumbing, water heaters, venting, chimneys,
structure damage.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of movement in there, and it's like I don't know why they would want to buy something like this, but maybe that's all they know, and it kind of all this rolls together. All right, and Joey, I need you to chime in on this. All of this rolls together where ignorance is not a bad word. And the sooner that we can welcome that word, then the better off we're going to be. I don't have subject matter expert on law when it comes to real estate.
Tell me about it.
And I'm okay with that. I learned it. And I don't have the same manner when it comes to the mortgages or what's going on in the real estate world and everything else. I know my field, and I'm pretty damn good at it. But I can tell you this much, that the more I learn from the three of you, the better off I serve my clients. Because I could recognize that stuff, and then I could share that with them, and I could guide them in the right direction in order to get them in there. So what is going on, Steve, with this couple here? Give me the more of a lowdown than what I did.
Sure. Well, the gist of it is that you put us in touch and you just said, hey, can you talk to these people that may be buying a house, and they did an inspection before they were going to buy it, which was extremely smart.
Seriously,
so for
but that's not
$1,000, whatever it was, like the fact is
when you're buying your landlord's place, it's not a slam dunk like if you're buying unknown real estate.
I don't know if it's just I think that's a good point, but I also think it's just any kind of real estate because you never know what you're getting.
I think it's wise to do it, but I'm just saying it's a 50-50 proposition whether that a buyer in that particular situation will decide to do that. But I do think it's wise, especially when you guys are talking about the kinds of things you discovered in the inspection.
Yeah. So, anyway, they sent me the report, and I had a conversation with them for about 45 minutes yesterday, and just went over everything, and I just want the best for them. So therefore, I went through everything, talking to them, saying, hey, these are valid concerns, sort of helping them understand even more than what, Charlie, you had told them as well, in regards to things that, are coming up as red flags. That's ultimately it's their decision to buy or not, or fix or whatever. But at the same time, when I went through the report, I pointed out some things that are not only just concerns that need to be, addressed, but like things that could be, bad for health. They could be bad for, something could happen at any given time, especially when it comes to electrical, which is a very serious thing. How many electrical fires are out there? I don't know. I'm not a fireman. Hey, Charlie, what's the percentage of fires that are started from electrical? I'm assuming it's a lot higher. I don't know.
But it all depends on who the fire inspector was at the time. It was a lot of these fire inspectors that I used to work with would annoy I almost used the C word. That annoyed the garbage out of me. That they would just drop cigarette butts. Oh, smoking, and drop a cigarette butt, and that's what causes the fire.
Oh, I'm talking about electrical fires.
It happens.
Though.
It happens.
We had a fire because my dad he threw a cigarette that wasn't quite extinguished back when I was a little boy. So that happens.
But we're talking electrical fires, though.
It happens a lot. I actually have a video.
A shocking amount of time.
I got a video that it happened. It was in Elk Grove Village. House I was doing the inspection. I took off the dead front panel of the electrical. The air conditioning kicked on, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw an explosion. All right.
No kidding.
Kidding. No, I'm not kidding. Yeah, absolutely true. I just did a Wayne's World thing. But no, I see it out of the corner of my eye, right?
Game on.
Game on is right. I see it out of the corner of my eye. So what does this knucklehead do? He goes, wait, the air conditioning just kicked on. I thought I saw some. Let's turn the air conditioning off and turn it back on again. And I get my camera out. Now I turn the video on. This is how dumb I am, right? But I captured it. Every single time that air conditioning kicked on, there was an explosion that happened right at the main disconnect. So we had loose wires that are in there.
That's pretty cool.
And I got it on my YouTube video. I'll pop it up there, and we'll get a link to it in there. And
free fireworks.
But this happens. And then when I was doing investigations and stuff like that, we would, we're able to trace where the fire started. So when they talk about arson investigation, they're really talking about cause and origin. What started the fire? Where did it start? And it's usually the other way around, origin and then cause. You got to find the start. But it happens. And people wonder, why do home inspectors make such a big deal out of spacers missing or little plugs missing and stuff like that in the panels? Because these sparks happen in these panels, and we need to contain them into the panel. If they get out of that and into the woodworking, we're in trouble.
There was multiple. Sorry. There was no. I appreciate it. Yeah. There were multiple double taps as well. Yeah. There was. There's things to the electrical that's scary, and then they were showing me that through your inspection, and what they captured was showing me the fact of like the HVAC situation, which you just mentioned, which is, if that kicks on and the electricals to it, or however that works, and then there's a fire or a spark, then it can be a fire, and there's mold in there's this, there's that. So, gotta take care of of the actual HVAC and furnace as well. These things they all add up. So when I had the conversation with them and going through all these things and so on, there was just a lot. And I think it's
add to that house. The biggest problem was that, they upgraded the electrical system from 60 amps to 100 amps. And a lot of people don't realize that, there's like 5 things that we have to make sure are able to handle the amount of electricity that the main disconnect is going to control and limit. So we had a 100 amp main disconnect in there. Okay, great. But it was being fed by a number 6 copper wire, which is only rated for 60 amps. All right, so we're going to allow 100 amps to flow through 60 amps. It also went through a meter panel. I'm talking about the electrical meter, not the meter, but the panel that holds the meter. That was also rated for 60 amps. So now that device isn't rated for 100 amps. The wire.
So what does that mean when you? What does that mean when you have a 60 going to an 100?
If something is
going to cause a lot of heat.
Well, it can. We can't guarantee that it's going to, but it can, and it's not rated to be able to handle that amount of electric. You may never use that amount of electric, so it may never come into play. But we have to make sure that the wire size, the meter panel, the disconnect panel, and these service entrance pipes, all right, that are bringing the wires in, that those are all the same size. Everything has to be equal or bigger than the main disconnect. The main disconnect is supposed to be the weak link. And I'll tell you, there's a whole lot of home inspectors that don't understand that. And what happens, we see this a lot. Somebody's going, well, I'm going to upgrade from 60 amps to 100 amps to make my house easier to sell. They go to Home Depot, they buy a $120 100 amp panel. They, disconnect everything else, put the new panel in there with the old wires and everything else. And looky here, I got a 100 amp panel. I get to charge more for my house for a lousy $120 investment. So I'm obviously my arms are swelling here.
No, these are really important because the thing is that that's not something that I think it's important for agents to know too, as far as that goes.
That's part of my mission.
When I see an inspection report and it shows that it's 60 going into 100, I'm like, ooh, right? So does that mean that you need to redo all the wiring, pull the new wiring, put new wiring in, and change
in that particular house, your service entrance cable needs to be increased. The service drop from the pole to the house. The splices were also cut. They just electric taped everything back in there when they put the new wires on.
And I saw some of the electrical tape was actually off of the wire, which was live.
Yeah. And then you leave the acorn nuts, which is bare metal, and all you need is a little bit of wind and let them touch, and there's no breaker to kill the power there. So that's just going to keep sparking and hopefully, well, not hopefully, I hope nothing ever goes bad, but it does happen.
That's scary. For sure.
Yeah, it does. I'm all emotional. When I get emotional, this time flies. So I apologize if I tuned anybody out, but I do want to close up, and I do want to get our contact information. Then we could get some final words. Steve, I'll start with you, please.
Sure. Steve Davis, Qamar Group, Real Brokerage. My number is 312-513-6314. You can find me at Instagram at I'm Steve Davis, and of course on Facebook. One of the things that I would tell anyone that's listening, if you guys need advice, if you want a different opinion, so on, and I can help in any way, please feel free to reach out to me, because I'd rather you have the facts than being misled down the wrong path.
Well said.
I also get emotional about electric service. It's just something that's near and dear to my heart. My name is Patrick Loftus.
Somehow I just feel I'm going to get slammed here. I'm waiting for it.
No,
good.
No, I'm nice. I'm nothing but fair to Charlie, unless you heard the 5 minutes before we went on the air. Then that was very unfair. But that's okay. We're on the air, so I've got to put the mask on, right? Like I'm some sort of nice person. But when it is necessary to get mean and nasty because somebody is trying to take advantage of you in a real estate transaction, you'll be glad you hired me. Find me on Instagram, Loftus_law. And if you've been watching our TikTok live at Loftus Law, thank you.
And Joey, I apologize for us not, pulling
you in
here
at all.
a little bit more. But it's the same thing. You're getting into this education stuff. You're putting all that information out there. And please add in, how do people get hold of some of that stuff?
Yep, well, the best place is the VALoanNerd.com. That's where you'll find all of my stuff in a single place. I'll be blogging on there, which is super exciting for me because I hate writing. No big deal. But if you want to, you can also call or text me at 630-235-2405. Follow me on the social medias as at the VA Loan Nerd across any of them.
Sounds good. And I want to thank Devin Tingle, our producer, for making everything work. We are over time. My name is Charlie. We also own Home Inspection University. So any real estate agent that wants to learn more about home inspections so they can help their clients better, I will give you all of our training programs for free. All right. I want to improve our profession.
That's huge.
So please reach out to me, 630-327-2700. I just gave my cell phone out there.
Whoops.
So call and text anytime you want. And again, my name is Charlie.
Anytime for Charlie.
I do forward it off to Patrick, Steve, and Joey after 8:30 at night. So my name is Charlie.